Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1116 of the Juicebox Podcast. Melanie's son, Shepard, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 11 years old. Today, we're going to speak about that and the struggles that Melanie has experienced since the diagnosis. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by AG1. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. Head there now to learn more about AG1. It's vegan-friendly, gluten-free, dairy-free, non-GMO, no sugar added, no artificial sweeteners. And when you make your first order with my link, you're going to get AG1 and a welcome kit that includes a shaker, scoop, and canister. You're also going to get 5 free travel packs and a year's supply of vitamin D with that first order at drinkag1.com/juicebox. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox.
My name is Melanie. I have 2 boys. One's 15, one is 11, and my 11-year-old is a type 1 diabetic. He was diagnosed in May of 2020 when things were super crazy. So we have come this far, and here we are.
Was he about 8 at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it was 3 days prior to his 8th birthday.
Did he have his birthday in the hospital?
No.
Okay.
We got out and he spent the night at home. And I remember I woke him up, the next morning on his birthday at home. Thank goodness. So that was nice.
Yeah. Oh, that is nice, actually. Did you have to consider that at the hospital? Did you have to ask him, hey, get us out of here, it's his birthday, or did it just work out?
I'll be honest with you. When he was diagnosed, it wasn't until several months later that I realized I was probably in such shock that I was just doing whatever they said. Mm-hmm. The fact that wherever he was going to be on his birthday was kind of, they were in charge of that. And I don't remember talking about that at all. I just remember it was going to be what it was going to be. I mean, if you think about that time, it was traumatic anyway, going into the hospital because we were kind of in the thick of COVID, and it was only me. Mm-hmm. We literally, to tag team for my husband and I to spend the night, I think we slept over only 2 nights. So we had to literally leave him in his hospital room alone. So one of us could go down, to the sign-in desk or whatever and trade off the little badge we had to have or whatever. So I was just doing whatever was necessary at the point,
Gotcha. No, I understand. That all makes sense to me. Okay. Mm-hmm. Was it a complete surprise, or do you have diabetes in your family?
It was a total shock and complete surprise. No diabetes in our family that I know of. No autoimmune. And now I have some autoimmune that had married in, but none of my blood relatives.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, we literally had no idea. And it's kind of funny looking back. as impatient as I am sometimes with some of the comments and things people make because they don't understand type 1 diabetes, I also am super patient because, I mean, the day he was diagnosed, I remember thinking like, oh, this is all our fault. He's been drinking too much root beer this week. You know, like just
I
the
did
silliest.
it. I found the root beer level that gives you type 1 diabetes.
I mean, so I was, I was there. I was part of that, just blissfully ignorant, not ignorant in a bad way, ignorant in the sense of the word, right? That I just didn't really understand at that point.
Did you beat yourself up about it, or were you able to get past it?
Well, that's a good question. I will say, I think the people that took us into the hospital, it was funny because before I really realized what was happening, they said, I hope that you are good at math. Welcome to type 1 diabetes. I hope you're good at math. And, also, I hope you understand that people are going to come at you with all sorts of things that they believe are going to be helpful. They're going to be hurtful. People don't understand this. Like they told me that up front. So that was really helpful to me. But it still bothers me sometimes. And I've gotten better. Let's just say that I've gotten better.
Listen, if you really stop and think, the sum total of things that any of us really understand is probably like around 5. I mean, honestly, Mary, if you and I went off on a different direction here and I said, let's talk about how they clean wastewater for drinking water. Tell me all about that process. You'd say, I don't know. I turn on the faucet and the clean water comes out.
Right.
How does the financial system work there?
Yeah.
Like it's just nobody knows.
Right. Not my lane.
Yeah, exactly. And why would it be? You're busy doing the thing you're doing. You have a limited amount of time. It's I don't think we think about ourselves that way. That you go to elementary school to learn basics. You go to middle school to get socialized. You go to high school to try to figure out something you're good at. You might go to college to hone in on it or go out into the world and get a job, or you make a baby or whatever you do. And those are really the things you know about. And then the rest of what you know is from what you hear, like adults in your life bantering back and forth. And then we all get 25 years old and go, oh my God, my parents are morons. I've been listening to them.
Right.
And then if you're really thoughtful, you have an existential moment where you go, I don't know anything about anything. And you spend the rest of your life trying to figure it out. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm glad you didn't beat yourself up terribly. How long do you think the symptoms were going on before you made it to the hospital?
He was complaining with a stomach ache for probably 2 weeks. And it was COVID. So, of course, we were doing do-it-yourself projects around the house, right? I mean, isn't that what everybody did, So what happened is we had kicked him out of his room. We were repainting, redoing the flooring in his room, all this stuff. So he was sleeping in the guest room. And this was probably like a couple of days into when he was really complaining about his stomach, and I was really noticing him complaining, and just kind of wondering, like, what's going on? Like, understanding finally, like, okay, something's not right because he doesn't usually complain, Also, I have to say this. This is my child that is the camel of the family, right? Like, he wakes up in the morning, he gets dressed, he brushes his teeth, he eats his breakfast, he does all the things that you do. He gets his things together, he goes out to the bus stop, he gets to school, and then he goes to the restroom. Okay, this is he just doesn't go that often. Okay. So I have him in the guest room, and I'm understanding finally something is not right with him. And so I sleep with him in the guest room, and I notice he gets up in the middle of the night and goes to the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, that's really strange. So then night 2, I sleep with him in the guest room. He gets up in the middle of the night and goes to the bathroom. And I'm still not really sure what experience it was in my life, but I said that minute, okay, this is diabetes. I got to call his doctor in the morning. Like, still not really understanding what that I knew about diabetes, but just understanding that was a symptom. And so when I woke up in the morning, I immediately, he's still asleep. I'm Googling all the symptoms, and, he's got all of them, but one of them that was unusual is the fruity breath. Yeah. And he came downstairs and he sits by me on the couch, and I say, Shepherd, give me a breathe on me. And I'm expecting, kid morning breath or whatever. Right. And it just smelled just like a pack of juicy fruit. I couldn't believe it. It was surreal,
Wow.
and I knew then, and I called his pediatrician. Couldn't get an appointment till later in the afternoon. And so all day long, especially him, he's super active. So we had gone on a bike ride, and then we came home and we were, at the swimming pool. He was swimming. We were waiting. We had a 3:00 appointment, and, he's being super active, but in the meantime, he's also drinking that root beer, So I think they said his activity level probably really helped him where he was. But we get there, and his pediatrician, both my boys' pediatrician, I just adore her. And she just looked right at me. And the way she said it was, he's insulin dependent diabetic. It was the word she used.
Okay.
And I still didn't fully understand what that meant.
Yeah, I was going to say, what did that mean to you when the words came out?
Well, I'll be honest. I think the first things, that's when the shock really started, because I had been looking at the symptoms, but then, as I just said, then we were busy all day. I was just like, oh, well, it's going to be what it's going to be. We're going to find out. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I think I thought, okay, he can't ever have a root beer again. He can't have sugar anymore, I think is what I thought.
I would have thought, I'm going to save so much money on root beer.
Right. Yeah, I believe that's what I thought. And
before we move on, Melanie, I have to tell you that I've made a mistake in the first 13 minutes, and I want to clear it up. Nobody else knows about it yet but me, but I'm going to share it with everybody, because if I have to know this, everyone has to know this.
Right.
I Googled, how often do camels pee, based on something you said. And then
my gosh.
I was faced with this sentence. They are so good at retaining moisture that their urine has the consistency of syrup. And now I'm never going to be able to get that out of my head. So that's your fault, and I needed you to live with it as well.
Oh, my goodness. Now I don't know if I should say that about my child anymore. Like, oh, what a visual. Ew.
Camels urinate infrequently, and their pee is very concentrated. FYI, their droppings are also very dry. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for that.
Let me just click off this, and let's...
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. I got actually, I felt weird when I read the sentence. I was like, syrup. I'm like, oh, no. Anyway, now that you've been tortured with that, now we can all live. Actually, I guess there's a lot of people listening to. Now you all know. So
it might take me a minute to move on from that.
I'm telling you, I got warm. I was like, ew.
Oh, my.
I have a question.
Yes.
How old are you?
Well,
Melanie, is that a problem to answer? Do you want to just answer what?
It's funny. I've had a lot of conversations about this, because I'm going to be 49 this year. So I'm getting to a big, milestone.
Okay.
I'm 48 right now.
But you're my age is what I was getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And geographically, are you more north, south, east, west, northeast, southwest?
I'm southeast. I'm in Georgia.
Okay. So this is just a question. It's not a indictment. I have this serious question, because my children now reside in Georgia a lot of the times.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yep.
What happens when you get to a certain point going south that no one drinks a diet drink anymore, or a no sugar drink? They're very difficult to find.
You know what? I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that to, because now I will say this. I grew up in North Alabama, and we did not drink diet drinks. I mean, drank all the Cokes, and they're all called Cokes too, no matter what it was. Mm-hmm. Right. You know how that works.
Yeah. Sure, like tissue, like Kleenex, like that idea.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But, I mean, I in my adult life, and of course now, we only have diet drinks. Now, restaurants, is that what you're referring to? Like, you go to a restaurant and you get Diet Coke or Coke Zero, pretty much, or Diet Pepsi.
Side of the road, gas stations, convenience stores, there's sweet tea, there's regular soda, juice. It's hard to find something that doesn't have sugar in it. Like, yeah. I mean, I guess once you're in the grocery store, you can accomplish it. But I mean, like, out in the grab and go world, it's just very difficult, unless I'm stopping at the same places over and over again. But I mean, I guess my bigger question is soda. Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry. I'm not talking to you. I'm really trying to understand a little bit. Yeah.
No.
In my wildest mind, I can't imagine giving somebody soda. Like
No.
but the world does it. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand that
Yes.
everybody drinks soda, and I'm not
Yes.
trying to come off like some like health nut, because
Right.
that's pretty obvious. I'm not that. But my point is that it's such a weird idea. I don't know what happened as I was growing up, but the idea of empty calories stuck with me really hard. But I don't think that happens to everybody. Today's episode is sponsored by AG1, and I drink AG1 every morning. I originally heard about AG1 on a different podcast. I had been using other drinks and not enjoying them, so I decided to try AG1 and loved it. I was using it every day when they approached me, and I was like, wait, you want to sponsor my podcast? I heard about this on another podcast. All right, cool. So here we are. When you use my link, drinkag1.com/juicebox, your first order will include a welcome kit. That's an AG1 shaker, scoop, and canister, the AG1 itself, 5 free travel packs, and a year's supply of vitamin D. I drink AG1 in the morning before I start my day. AG1 makes me feel like I'm giving my body the nutrients that it needs to get through a hard day of podcasting. I'm just kidding. It's not that hard to podcast, but still, I feel great when I drink AG1. AG1 is my foundational nutritional supplement. It helps me start my day. It helps me to support my immune system, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So if you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Drink AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to my link, drinkag1.com/juicebox. That's drinkag1.com/juicebox. Check it out. If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information.
I will say, I know where you're getting this. You're not out of bounds or like crazy. Like, I will say, I grew up around a lot of that, but once I guess, to me, that was a Northern Alabama thing. Once I kind of moved away and grew up or whatever,
Yeah.
I also, same thing. Like, why would you drink at the time I thought of it as calories. Now,
Right.
Of course, I think of it as carbs, right? But, why would you drink your calories? Save those to eat, right? Like,
Listen, it goes without saying, you would make a massive change in your life if you just stopped drinking soda. Like it would just be such a massive change for your health. And I don't know that people know that. People carrying extra weight, you'd probably lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks.
Automatic.
It's just like that kind of stuff. And
right.
Anyway, so like you're a lovely lady and you're very thoughtful and everything. And you're like, my kid drinks root beer and root beer and root beer. And that, I don't know, it just threw me off. Like, so.
Well, no, it's a joke. It's a joke we have actually, because in the summer, especially, we have a boat, we have a swimming pool. So we're, always outside by the pool. We always have a cooler packed or whatever. And for the most part, to be honest, we drink water. My son has always liked beverages like that. So when we're at the pool or on the boat or something, a root beer is like, that would have been a treat. And that is just a funny joke that we have when I look back at his diagnosis story. I'm doing air quotes because my husband had just bought him root beer. It was not something that we usually kept around.
Oh, okay.
And so the fact that he had that was literally why that was my first thing. Oh my goodness, we've been drinking root beer all week.
Oh, I see.
Right?
I see.
So,
You're like this thing that he doesn't. Oh, I see. Gotcha.
yeah.
Well,
So like it wasn't really a normal thing.
mhm.
It was kind of a treat. And I mean, it was just literally he had one like right before we went to the doctor, right?
Now it's
Yeah.
funnier.
And
By the way, now it's hilarious.
yeah.
Okay.
No,
All
no.
right.
So yeah. So just so you understand, now, I mean, now I've outed myself. I grew up drinking that sort of stuff, but I didn't raise my kids with that. And it's so funny too, because I also had that whole thing of, and I don't know if this is just my age of mom world or what it is. I don't know. I don't have littles anymore, but I also grew up with that idea of like, don't give them juice, right? Like
Mhm.
have them eat the fruit. Don't drink the fruit, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so now we got juice boxes in every corner of the house, right? Which
I-
I used to never give them juice. So
I hear that
anyway.
so often from people. Like, we never drank juice, but now it's everywhere. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I watch Arden drink a juice box when she has to, and it's like she's taking a supplement or a pill that she doesn't want to take.
Mm-hmm.
But she knows it works, and so she does it. But I would imagine that if diabetes disappeared tomorrow, you would never see Arden drink juice again in her entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Well, and the funny thing about it is, though, I mean, like, I do think he gets sick of it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, especially those middle of the night ones or whatever. But Shepard loves my type 1 diabetic. His name is Shepard, and he loves sweet things and sweet drinks. And I don't know, if I had given him juice as a child, he probably would have loved it. But the funny thing, like talking about all this along that line, it's another memory for me. Actually, when I was pregnant, you have to do those glucose tests.
Mhm.
And, I'm drinking the drink and I'm drinking it and it's just awful. I mean, it's just terrible. And I think you have to drink it in like they like time you or something. I don't remember. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I remember looking at the nurse saying like, gosh, that drink, it's just so terrible. Is that the flavor I chose? Or it just has such this distinct flavor. I can't put my finger on it. She was like, it's sugar. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not used to drinking that.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Sugar almost shuts me off. I mentioned it on a recent podcast. I was somewhere where they had what they call Mexican Coke, so made with real cane sugar still. I guess that's still how it's made in Mexico. And I was like, I'm going to try this. And I couldn't choke it down. I was like, there's so much sugar, and this is what it felt like to me. Hey, before we move on, there's a famous artist named Shepard Fairey. I'm not sure how he says his last name, Fairey, but he has type 1 diabetes too. It's not a thing that he like, I hear him say out loud very often, but he definitely has type 1. So,
spell that last name again. Of course, I have to look him up now. I mean,
Fairey.
what? Okay.
Anyway.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always like to share things like that with Shepard. It's nice to have just examples, of just move on, just succeed, do your thing.
Oh, a million,
like, look at this
%.
guy.
Yeah, you're always like, you're always trying to model like positivity and success to your kids anyway. But I take your point. Like, I've done it. I've been like, Arden, stop. Look, this is the Olympics. See that man skiing across the screen? That's Chris Freeman. He's been on my podcast. He has type 1 diabetes. He's in the Olympics. Like, and then she goes, hey, yeah, I mean, okay. And then she time she was interested by something like that, but I still did it. Like, Chris Rudin was on like something called like, I don't know, one of those gladiator TV shows. And I was like, watch this. I'm like, that guy's got type 1, So stuff like that.
I need to find like a profession, like a bass. My type 1 Shepherd, he loves fishing. I mean, that's his goal. That's his sport, bass fishing. He loves it. So I need to Google that now that we're talking about that.
Yeah. There was somebody on, now I get confused as to whether or not this is something I've recorded or something you've heard. But somebody was on recently whose husband was like I started to mock her, and I shouldn't have, but he fished in college, and I was like, wait, you fished in college? Like, people play baseball in college? Like, that same idea? But he does, and it's a professional sport, which I was completely unaware of. And anyway, I'm not sure.
Well, and I have to learn more about it. I mean, now, this is just a blossoming thing. We tried the soccer, we tried the swimming. He likes swimming. He's tried a lot of sports. Like I said, he's really active anyway, but we live on a little fishing lake. And
Okay.
he just would rather be fishing than anything. And if it finally was like, just had to like knock myself over the head and be like, this is his sport. This
Yeah.
is his thing. Like, just let him go fish. He's out. He's being active. He loves it.
That's
This is
excellent.
the thing he's passionate about. And so
Very
I got to learn more about it. I think locally here, you can't really get into it like on a team or anything until you're in middle school. But I think some of the high schools around might even have bass fishing teams. So I got to figure it all out.
It's a thing I didn't know about that obviously exists. So, okay.
Yeah.
So you leave the hospital. It's only 3 years ago. It's during COVID. They give you a pen. Did they talk to you about glucose monitors? Like, what's the sum total of what you understand that you're trying to accomplish?
We get a pen, and we get told that we will not be receiving Dexcoms pumps or anything like that for at least a year, right? It's this mentality that I hear people talk about. Oh, well, you have to learn how to do it the manual way. You have to really learn the math. You have to really understand it. So I'm accepting this at this point. We're still in the hospital, right? And you have to keep in mind too, I'm here going to the classes as we do. They teach us, the survival skills basically.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband can't come. So I'm having to learn it for both of us. And his only choice is to just read the manual, basically.
Yeah.
So that was really stressful. I learned the basics and went home, just really was trying to depend a lot on free snacks and, how am I going to survive this? Trying to teach my husband everything that I kind of, how sometimes you just pick up things in the classroom that you can't get from the book or whatever. We're trying to learn all this together. Finally, I think it might have been like 2 months later. It wasn't too long. I finally I was like, we're getting a Dexcom. Like, this is crazy. Yeah, I remember now. It was like right around, because he was diagnosed at the end of May, and it was like the end of June, we get the Dexcom. So that was great. And that just changes the way you treat, honestly. I mean, it's hard to be really aggressive, in my opinion, or bold. Let's call it bold,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's hard to be bold when you're finger pricking all the time because you're not, you got an 8-year-old kid. They're not wanting to finger prick all the time.
Yeah.
So we start this new management strategy. I learned a ton of that from listening to your podcast. Thank you so much for everything that you do. It changed everything for me. I mean, it really turned on a light bulb and made me, go back to that conversation where we were talking about the birthday and the hospital and all that. And I was like, whatever it takes, guide me, tell me. I don't know. This is this whole new world I don't understand.
Mhm.
Well, then I start listening to your podcast and it makes me realize like, yeah, there was a whole new world that those guys didn't even understand. Right. So now I'm going to go up to like this, maybe they understood it, but they certainly weren't putting it on me at that point. Let's just say that. Right. I go up to this next level of this treatment, and I'm being a little more bold and doing things like splitting boluses for, fatty or high protein meals and things. And then I realized I really needed a pump. So we started pushing for that. So then by October, we get the Dash. He starts the Omnipod DASH. And I'll never forget, we had traveled to Savannah for a soccer tournament. We're big soccer. His older brother's huge soccer player. So anyway, but we were there for Shepherd for a soccer tournament. That was when he still played. And we got some really crazy lows at the time because, we still didn't understand activity and the pump and, doing lower temp basals and stuff like that. So we just learned just by jumping right into it,
There's no better way than it's upsetting in the moment. And I understand why people might not want to do that, but having the experiences so that you can see them happen is basically the best way to figure it out.
Yes. Yeah. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
It was scary at some times, but you learn so much. Like I'll never forget dosing him for a milkshake, and you get these milkshakes at these places and there are like 100 carbs or something just crazy scary. And
Mm-hmm.
I just dosed it all up front. It's like 8:00 at night. I'm like such a little type 1 baby at this point, right? I have no idea what I'm doing, and he drinks it down, but of course it's hitting real slow. Right.
Uh-huh.
And so he's going, that night was terrifying. And I learned a lot. I mean, I immediately realized, I immediately was like, wow, this is what I could have done a lot differently, you know? So yeah, just jumping right in.
That's the moment, right? Where you think like, well, there's the number. And it's really impressive, Melanie. You made the first leap. You were like, well, this is way more insulin than we usually use. But if that's what the number says, then that's what the number says. And you did that, which is laudable because most people are like, no, I'm not doing that. And then they end up getting very high and that fear stays with them. So you caused yourself a problem and then you figured out how to fix it. Yep. So you learned how to bolus for the milkshake and you learned how to deal with probably, I would say, a stubborn low that probably lasted hours, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I even knew what that was really at the time, right? Like,
but now looking back, you see like, oh, there was too much insulin in there. It was holding him low. So when we were trying to bring the blood sugar up, we couldn't because we were just really half, feeding the insulin that was already in there that didn't have anything to do. But I mean, like all of that stuff is so valuable because it's hard for somebody just to explain it to you. When you're diagnosed, like no one's going to explain that to you. No one.
No, it's too much. And they know. That's what I was like in the hospital. I felt like they just don't put that all on you because how can you? Mm-hmm. And it was just, all it was for us was sheer terror. I mean, I remember Shepherd just like, literally, he was like, our oldest son had already gone to bed. It had gotten late by the time this really started turning disastrous, right? And he looked at me and my husband and just was like, can you get Jack in here too? I mean, they say one of the symptoms of like a really low is like this feeling of like just dread. And I mean, you could just see it. He was just like, oh no, like this is awful. I need my brother in here too. Like we all have to be here together right now. And it was really sad and terrifying. But I mean, we learned a lot,
I watched Arden deal with a low blood sugar the other day. So she's home from college now for probably coming up on 2 months. And now the quality of food, no disrespect to Georgia, but the quality of food is better. And as far as nutrition goes and cooking methods, you don't have to fry everything, Georgia. I'm just going to say it. And so her insulin needs have gone down fairly significantly. I've stabilized her A1C and her variabilities, and she's like, I made some changes to her settings, but she still like once in a while, they went out to lunch. Those people, my wife and my daughter went out to lunch, and Arden was aggressive like she was at school.
Yeah.
And about 2 hours later, maybe 2.5 hours later, she's like, I'm getting low. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, yeah, I don't know why. And then she went back and looked at everything she did. She's like, I did everything the way I would have. And I was like, yeah, I think maybe the food's just different here. And so, it can be, you can find it. I'm sure I could find the same food in Georgia, but it seems that every time I go there, somebody is giving me a beignet and putting 9 pounds of like powdered sugar on top of it to the point where I can't even see the beignet. I'm like, where is it under there? And that kind of stuff. So anyway, I watched her handle the low, and it was protracted. It took a while for her to fix it. Yeah. And there's that like far away look. You know what I mean? The number's okay, but they're not okay yet. And I did not get involved. Like I just I watched her, she was doing it. And I thought, well, she handled this when she was at school. She can do this here too. So I just left her alone.
I try not to go there because I'm just naturally a very anxious person, which has made this whole thing very difficult. Sure. But I try not to think about him going away and doing it on his own. But I also think like there has got to come a time in his life where I don't, because I do that. I'll watch him, like you were saying, they have a look. But me, I'm like, are you okay? Are you coming up? You feeling better? Like what? Do you need more? Like, do we need to prick your finger? Is this timing? Right. And I think, gosh, this has to be so annoying to him for me to just be after him on this, you know, but it's kind of a real thing sometimes, especially, when you throw activity in. For us, summer is so hard because we are so active. We have company at our house all the time. And, it's like a vacation. You're not eating right. You're doing different activity. You're going to bed at different times, right? Like everything's just kind of wild. And that's, to me, that just makes diabetes a little harder, right? It's a little more of a challenge. I mean, even your pump settings and stuff are timed, so.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then you start leaving that that clock is set up for you. You don't really think about it that way, but it is. It's
It is.
it's set up to match what normally, quote unquote, happens to you. And then you move normally to 3 hours later when your basal is 20% lower because you're usually sleeping, and boom, problems. So, and then people like me say things to you like, well, there's a lot of variables. And you go, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, gotcha. Thanks.
I didn't notice.
Well, and it's funny because I don't know why I'm the way I am. Okay.
Wait, Melanie, what does that mean? Go deeper on that.
Let's go. I guess what I was about to say is things like if he sleeps later, because our ratio changes for breakfast. He has a lower ratio or higher. Anyway, the number is lower. He's 1 to 7 for breakfast right now. And then he pops over to 1 to 9 at I think it's was 10 o'clock when we were in school. And then when we got into summer, I eventually changed it on his pump to 11. But I can't tell you how many weeks I went of oh no, let me just figure this out and manually override the pump for the right ratio. I hear all of you guys. I wish that my mind worked that way better, where I could set up these different, or change the settings. I just would almost, because I guess I just feel oh, it's just going to change back in a minute anyway. I'm just going to work through this,
So first of all, this is such a common problem, right? You get your settings set, and then you think, well, that's done, and you don't think about that anymore. So now all of a sudden, I don't know, you're not getting the same result at a meal that you used to be terrific at. And instead of just thinking, oh, I might not be using the correct amount of insulin because maybe the kid's put on 3 pounds or grown an inch or something like that, or has been very sedentary this week and usually he's very active, and all that stuff. It's hard to keep that in mind in the moment. Also, I want to just kind of throw this in here because you said something when you're talking about your settings, and you said you were higher or lower. I don't know which is it, higher or lower. It helps me immensely to talk about it as weaker and stronger.
Yes.
Those words help me a lot when you're thinking about carb ratios, correction factors, basal insulin. I'm making my basal.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm making it stronger. I'm making it weaker. That helps me.
Yeah. So his breakfast is stronger, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right. No, it's just so much easier. More aggressive, less aggressive, whatever the words work for you.
Yes.
But yeah, higher and lower is meaningless.
Yeah. To me, it doesn't fit right. To me, yeah.
Well, especially because when you using your insulin to carb ratio, for an example, if your insulin to carb ratio is 100 and then you make it, I don't know, 90, you lowered your carb ratio, which makes it feel like, because of the words being used, that you've somehow made lessened it. Right. But you've made it stronger because now 1 unit, instead of covering 100 carbs, now covers only 90 carbs.
Exactly. So you understand why I get confused. It's opposite, kind of. Yeah.
That's why the words help there. So anyway.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Weaker and stronger, aggressive, less aggressive, whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter to me. All right, Melanie. So things are rocking along. You're figuring things out. Got them out. You're being active. You're not scared, which is pretty crazy. Why aren't you scared?
Oh, I'm scared.
But why isn't the fear stopping you from playing soccer, from trying things, from bolusing for a milkshake?
Oh, well, first of all, I had decided early on, as far as activity and the things they were going to do, this was not going to change our life. It's not. I mean, period. Can we be as free and spontaneous as we were before? Unfortunately, no. And that hurt me. I mean, that hurt me to the core. That part of it. I mean, I definitely went to therapy. Let's just say that. I grieved that loss, but I was that is because he was so young. Let's say that. That was, for me, my burden to bear. I was going to figure out how he would never really realize, right? I'm he's young enough that this is going to be his way of life, right? He might remember before diabetes some, but if we do this right and we start off on the right foot and we're doing this from a health conscious standpoint of this is what you do to be healthy, then I'm going to figure out what this is and we're going to learn to do it. And you're going to just keep doing your thing. And that's, I don't know, that's just how I decided I was going to deal with
Was
it.
that you being stubborn at first? Like, this isn't going to change anything? Or was that you being hopeful? You know?
I think it was probably hopeful.
Okay.
Because down deep there, I believe there was a voice telling me that everything was changed.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I struggled with this. I mean, like I said, I think I was in shock at first, and it was weird. I felt very unsupported when this first happened, and very misunderstood when he was diagnosed, are the best words I could use. And it was not for lack of a wonderful community of friends, family, and all that. None of that. They were all awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think I felt isolated because, and I think most of the people who are listening to this will understand, it is sort of misunderstood. And it's a lot of ways of learning this new way of life that you realize nobody else has to deal with, you know? And it felt very isolating to me, but I wanted everything to stay the same.
Yeah.
So hard, you know, like I was working so hard to make everything stay the same. I don't even remember what the point of this was because I started getting I'm getting a little emotional.
I hear you. You're fine. So you just were fighting something that felt like it couldn't be fought, but you were going to fight it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try to will it back into where you wanted it to be.
Right.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I was going to manhandle this diabetes
Right.
to fit us. We weren't going to conform to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, duh, obviously we got to have the insulin, right? So like we do that. And anyway, I wanted it to be good and I want him to be healthy.
And you went to therapy for that?
Yes.
Yeah. What did they help you with?
I think in any therapy situation, this is just my opinion, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I think just talking about it was what I really needed.
Yeah.
Because to take it a step further, you know, talking about it to my friends was something that I did at first a little. But I got to the point that I felt like this broken, sad record, right? Over and over with the same things that I didn't like. I felt like I didn't want to tell anybody about it because I felt like nobody was really understanding. So anyway, that therapy, I think, just helped me to have somebody to just unload just week after week of all the things that I hate about this,
Yeah.
right? That I just generally am a positive person. And I felt like it just turned me into this, like I only had negative things to say.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that direction. And so it socially, I'm a very social and outgoing person. Socially, I was starting to retreat. And then it was kind of compounding things, right? Like then I wasn't talking to anybody. My husband understood, and I can talk to him. I don't want to gloss over that.
Right.
We had each other, of course, but it just wasn't the same.
Right.
I don't know. So the therapy, I think that's how it helped me because I just went and just complained, just complained and got it all out, you know?
I'm going to sound like I have a rawhide wallet that I made myself with a peace sign on it, but it's all mindset.
Yeah.
Everything's mindset. Like the idea that you're going to manhandle diabetes. Like I love that, like the feeling like I've got this, I'll knock it over, I'll run through it, whatever, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then once you realize you can't physically change the nature of not making your own insulin, you know, like then you recognize there is still a completely normal life. And it's up to you not to fight against that in your mind.
Right.
That really is what ends up being. Like I've talked to so many people who have issues that they're trying to get past. A lovely woman just last week on the podcast who's blind, someone who's in, you know, a wheelchair, then, you know, like all these and everything in between. People have had like cancer over and over again, or have lost children to horrible accidents, or by the way, I didn't think any of this was going to happen when I started making a podcast, but now I've had all these experiences talking to these people. And I'll tell you, the ones that do well are the ones that don't fight the reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it. They don't fight the reality. They say, this is it. And so I'm going to live very well here where I am. And that's, I don't know. It seems like it's mindset to me. And that's where if you're not careful and you're just talking too quickly or being flippant, you would say something like, I mean, there's a phrase I use in my personal life that I don't think I use in the podcast very often, but sometimes I look at people and I say, oh, they want to be upset.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not that they want to be upset. It's that it's their inclination to get sucked into that void. And so they almost like throw their hands up and they become a part of it. They're just like, I'm going to dive in and be miserable along with this miserable situation. We could all do that. Everyone listening could just say, I have type 1 diabetes. My kid has it. They can't X, Y, Z, or these things are harder because of this. I'm always worried. This is a possibility. Insulin could kill me. Like you can run through all those things and make yourself go, oh yeah, wow, this is terrible.
Right.
Right. Or you could look up and see Chris Freeman skiing along in the Olympics. They go, that guy's got like what appears to be 3% body fat. He looks like a
for sure.
Yeah. Like apparently this is all doable.
Well, and I think that what you're describing is what was almost the worst thing was that what was happening to me, because I've always had that sunny, or just that sort of outlook of like, you can just decide, you just decide to wake up happy, decide you're going to have a good day. Like it's how you react to situations and blah, 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 and all the things, right?
Yeah.
About mindset. Okay. But I was just falling into this deep, like I said, it was like weird. It was like one thing would lead to another. Like I wasn't even doing it on purpose.
Sure.
Like I was saying, like withdrawing from my friends or, stopping talking about it or whatever. It just kind of started happening. And one thing led to another. And I was like, this is getting dark. Like I've got to get out of this. Like this. And so all that to say, then I was having these really negative feelings about myself, almost judging myself, right? Like, God, how are you letting yourself get this way?
Yeah.
Like, get over it. Let's move on. Let's do this. But there was a part of me that just couldn't move on the way I have been accustomed to do with other challenges in my life.
You're stuck. Like something in not you consciously, but something in you wants to be in that space.
That's right.
Right. And maybe it's sadness, maybe it's depression, maybe it's just that feeling of loss that it's hard to get past. But the truth is, this is terrible. Like I'm just going to like preface this by saying, unless you have some sort of a mental illness that is stopping you, everyone else, there is a conscious decision to be made at some point. You have to say, I am no longer going to respond to these influences the way I am. I'm going to respond to them differently. And trust me, I know better than anybody because there I was a stay-at-home dad. My 2-year-old daughter had type 1 diabetes. We're in the hospital. Everything's going crazy. And all I can think is, oh, we're going to go home. My wife's going to go back to work. Like this is going to be on me. And, if you listen to the podcast long enough, my wife puts it as my brain works backwards from no. Whatever I hear, I think no first, and then I find a way to it. And like, whereas you might have been like, we can do it. I'm like, this isn't going to work. And then I try to find reasons why I'm wrong about that. It's just my thought process. But somehow on the other side of it, I am an eternally hopeful person. Like I wake up every morning like yesterday did not happen. So,
start fresh.
Right. I think that, my mom's passing has helped me with this, and watching her life like completely unfold and finish. That it's a t-shirt it's a t-shirt slogan, but life is today. Like what happened yesterday is gone and it doesn't exist, and you have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Like this is life right here. So are you going to sit around and bemoan it, or are you going to live it? And I think that's the decision, really.
Right. Well, and you mentioned your mom. I think that was a piece of it for me. I think it brought back a lot of grief. My mom passed away 12 years ago. She was a nurse. And, when stuff like this happened, even my friends growing up, they always called my mom, hey, advice, this or that or whatever. Yeah. And for me, it would have been great just to have my mom,
Right. Well, so now this is happening. It's one sort of a loss. It's the loss of, when your son's diagnosed, it's the loss of what you think life is going to be, or almost what it was supposed to be, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then there's like some like little bit of your brain that It's like, here, this would be a great time to screw with Melanie. Remember your mom died? Like, wait, what?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if you had her here now, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, well, too bad, little girl. She's gone.
Yeah,
It was kind of like,
yeah, now you're 8 years old and you just skinned your knee and nobody's coming to help you.
yeah.
Except somebody gave you a baby and it has a skin knee too. And now you're laying on the ground with your, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do.
And it's funny you were saying this was another diagnosis story, like thing for me. You're in the hospital. They come in at 2 a.m. They prick his finger. They give him a juice. I kind of rouse a little. I'm like, oh yeah, when you're in the hospital, they do the rounds. They come check on you, right? Everybody. I'm not thinking diabetes at all. I know nothing.
Right.
And I go to class the next day, and they're like, yeah, and you're gonna want to set your alarm, and you're gonna check his blood sugar every night at like around 2 a.m. And I'm like, oh, ew. Like that was on purpose. Like I have to do that now every night.
Yeah,
what is happening?
Melanie's like, I normally sleep at that time.
Yeah. Like, no, this can't be true. Yeah. Are you joking?
Yeah, can we tell the diabetes to just like, calm down overnight or something? Or could it take a break? Doesn't it sleep? I know, that's that realization.
Yeah.
And then you do the thing. You do the, like, everybody talks like, it's always the parents, right? They're like, well, I just won't sleep anymore. And then they actually try. I tried it for years. I was like, I just won't sleep.
Yeah.
It didn't work out well.
I mean, the thinking just goes downhill with no sleep, right? Like the days become a little less productive. So I will say this, Omnipod 5, we started it in May of last year. What's this year? So May of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, they were just rolling it out. I feel like I told my endocrinologist that it was released, right? Like it was amazing. We jumped right on board. I was so excited for it. In the first round, we all just got new PDMs and had to like reset everything or whatever. But the first round, I'll just never forget. It was literally first pod, no learning, no nothing. Boom, we sleep all night.
Mm-hmm.
For like 3 nights in a row. And it's like, those first nights of sleep you get after a newborn. I was like a new person, getting all this wonderful rest.
Oh,
8 straight hours,
I'll tell you, I say it as much as I can. Sleep is one of those things that drains away very slowly. You don't see it coming. You're a different person. You can't react the same. Your emotions are different. It throws your hormones off. It throws off everything about you. And you turn into a different person and don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
I mean, hence the therapy. Like that was literally that's one of the things my therapist was like, I think you're having an identity crisis. Like, I don't think you know who you are anymore with this new situation. And I'm sure. I mean, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was like, that sounds right. Let's talk more about that, because probably what you just said, all of those things combined are it's just not a great recipe some days, right? Like
you don't recognize that the person you are today, like take diabetes out of the mix for a second, whoever you are, you're the Melanie you are. It is a slow transformation from that person who was born that went off to school. Like you build slowly into a person. And then suddenly someone rushes up to you and says, so many things are going to change that you're not going to even see them happening. And you can't take time to assimilate. You can't take time to learn. You can't grieve. There's nothing to do because if you don't do it right now, see Shepherd over there, he's going to die. And you go, oh, okay. So you're in fight or flight mode 24/7 constantly. And then 2 days into it, somebody goes, by the way, that'll be while you're supposed to be sleeping too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, even in a war movie, they'll say, I'll take first watch, you sleep. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like
they recognize that you can't, I mean, there's like sleep deprivation training right? Like it's
makes people crazy.
It's a whole thing.
By the way. Yeah. You should look into what they do to Navy SEALs to train them in that BUDS program.
Bless.
Yeah, they don't let them sleep forever. And it's very few people that can like still function in that situation.
Right.
Yeah. And it's certainly not, it's not me and Melanie. That's for sure.
Oh, count us out. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's going to row the boat? Not me.
Well, and I think too, again, identity, if we're talking about identity and me,
right.
I could just go ahead and say it because I feel like I try to find the strength in it. A lot of people look at it negatively or whatever, but I'm a little bit of a control freak. I mean, I like to have a little bit of a handle on things. Okay. And number one, diabetes, I learned pretty quickly, go ahead and just let that go. Because sometimes you're just going to have to react. You're not always going to be able to be ahead of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole control thing was really hard. And then you go to school. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the nurses and the county nurses and the people all around are just like, yeah, no, that's not, no, we can't, we're not doing it the way you said because it's policy. I mean, that was a struggle for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful for all the ideas and things that are shared on our Facebook group, in your podcast and all that, because that helped me get to where we are texting diabetes now.
Oh, Melanie, do you know you called it our Facebook group, and that almost made me cry for some reason? Oh my God. I'm so grateful you think about it that way.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's always like the first thing in my feed, and I always get sucked into reading. I think even just reading what people are saying and reading the comments and things that people share.
Yeah.
I've learned so much. I'm of course from the podcast as well. I mean, I remember especially the early days, just listening to the pro tips and all that, like how much I learned. But I do feel like it's ours,
Oh,
right?
I swear to you, I got
thing.
filled up. I thought she thinks of it like it's ours. That's so wonderful. Yeah. Like I actually felt like I accomplished something when you said that.
Yeah.
And
Well, you have. I mean, be sure in that. Be sure in that.
I don't get
sure.
to feel that way, Melanie, because I'm not mentally ill. So I don't spend a lot of time sitting around telling myself all the good things I've done. Because I think
I'm proud of you. I just want to say that I'm proud of you and for all the work that you've done. And you should be too, because, it's just a community. And when I would find myself talking to like the school board saying like, look, there's a whole community of us that this is the way we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right, because each person, you have to understand, each person that lives with this disease has to treat themselves individually, personally, and what they find is right.
Yeah.
Your policy doesn't dictate that.
Right. Melanie,
So we're going to have to learn to get along.
What was that noise? Do you have a phone from 1984 in your house?
I do. No.
No.
I have the old-fashioned ring on my mobile phone.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, I'm at my grandmother's house and it's 1978. I just heard that noise. I was like, that's exactly how it made me feel. I was like, I could picture where the phone hung on her wall with a 900-foot cord on it so she could walk around her entire house on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
That's the way we lived back then, for sure.
Okay. Look, I just pulled up Arden's CGM while you were talking, and it was her birthday 2 days ago. So we've been to a couple of restaurants, and I'm looking at her last 24 hours, and she's been over 120 3 times and under 70 once in the last 24 hours.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I look at the last 6 hours, it's astonishing. Like she's, was asleep in that time. I'll even go back 12 hours to like, I don't know, midnight. She had a rise at, I don't know, 5 in the morning, and the algorithm got ahead of it. I mean, this is loop, but it stopped her at like 120. She sat at 120 for an hour and a half, and then it just brought her right back down again. She's 86 right now. She hasn't eaten. She hasn't eaten yet today. She's been in the mid 80s for 4.5 hours now. Like, so yeah, there is a way other people do this, and please stop fighting me about it. Really would be
right.
Yeah.
Right. Like I literally used your analogy in a Zoom meeting. It was like our 504 meeting, and it was a Zoom. I'm pretty sure it was your analogy about imagine high, like a high blood sugar is, picture what a piece of sugar looks like, how it's pointy and, whatever, and it runs through your veins. Was that you?
I definitely said that. Yeah. So
I literally looked at the people and I was like, when Shepard is high, because that was the problem, they wouldn't correct him. Yeah. I mean, he would be at school like over 300 all the time. I was losing my mind. Okay. Like, and I was like, what does it mean to you when he has a high blood sugar? And they all just looked at me like, I had lobsters coming out of my ears, because they probably had never really thought about it before. I mean, I wouldn't have either. Okay.
Sure.
No worries, people. I get it. But so I did that whole analogy. To me, it means that there's like sugar inside his veins, just like scraping away at his veins, and it's not good. And I want to make that go away as soon as possible, every single time.
Right.
No exceptions. And you're going to have to work with me on that. We got to work this out.
Yeah. All of us here are dying at a certain rate. My son is now dying faster because of this.
Yeah.
There's damage being done to his body. And I mean, there's damage being done to all of our bodies. That's part of being alive. But you no need to speed it up. And by the way, there's a strong possibility I call this episode Southern Ear Lobster. And I don't know why. But I think it would make people go, what in the hell is that? And then they'll have to wait a whole hour to hear it. So
whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
I think that
sounds good.
Yeah. I mean, those were words no one's ever said to me in my life. They looked
You've
at
never heard from The Christmas Story? He looked at me like I had lobsters coming out of my ears. Is that the movie it's from? The Christmas movie, A Christmas Story?
Is that the pellet gun Christmas movie?
Yeah, you'll shoot your eye out,
Okay,
right?
so I'm going to say something that's probably going to shock some people and piss off some other people. I've never seen that movie, so.
Oh, no. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. It's okay. Okay.
I came to movies a little later in my life. I love going to the movies, but I came to it a little later.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to like bum you out, but I was really broke when I grew up. Like we didn't like pay to do things, like, go to things. Like I've never seen Animal House.
Well, I don't think I've seen that either.
Yeah, but other movies that like
are like just givens, like The Goonies or like things that people.
There's a good example. I've never seen that.
Oh,
what's the one where the dolls turn into Mad Dolls after midnight?
Chucky or Gremlins.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Oh,
yeah. So I've never seen all. I saw Jaws in a theater when I was 5, and then somehow I saw Meatballs in a theater.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which I think was inappropriate. And then for a long stretch until Star Wars came out, I didn't see any real movies.
Well, The Christmas Story, I will say this about this particular one. I think it plays like 24/7 around Christmas time on like TBS or something like that is when I finally saw it. And I don't think I ever really saw it or actually sat and watched it until I was an adult. I think as a child, I don't know if it was because it was the theme with the shoot your eye out thing and I wasn't into guns. I don't know, but I never really got into it. But as an adult, I could really appreciate it. It's good. It's a classic.
It had to be firm but subtle. Flick says he saw some grizzly bears near Pulaski's candy store. They looked at me as if I had lobsters crawling out of my ears. I could tell I was in imminent danger of overplaying my hand. So
thank you.
Yeah, I think it's from The Christmas Story, but I don't know what that is. Anyway, my first movie was Grease.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, but I was really young.
Well, and I'll say, like, to your point, I mean, we didn't spend a lot of money doing that kind of thing. And you mentioned Grease. Back in the day when everybody had VCRs and you could, we didn't even have a VCR. I remember for my birthday, I wanted a sleepover. How were we going to watch movies and stuff? We didn't have a VCR. So my mom rented a VCR for us to have for my birthday party.
Oh, that's so nice. So here's one of the ways that I look back in hindsight now and know my dad knew he was leaving us and that he felt bad about it. So he started buying us things. And one of the things he bought would have been I'm going to do the math, about in 1983, he bought a VCR for us. And I'm going to tell you that we were broke in a way that is hard to put into words. And a VCR back then, do you know what it cost?
I don't know, but I know it was a lot.
It was $1,000.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
In the early 80s. My dad probably didn't make $20,000 a year.
Oh,
you know. And so he bought this on a credit card, obviously, and put it in the house. And then we would have to go to a pharmacy that was nowhere near our house. And they had a little room in the back where they rented tapes. And you had to give them, they had I think that there was like a deposit on everything you took out. Like every VHS tape was worth like $100 or $200 to them. So if you didn't return it, you'd be charged like this exorbitant number.
Wow.
Like to bring it back because they could only get a certain amount of them from the movie company.
Yeah.
And that's why you had to return it promptly so other people could have it because they couldn't afford to have them in there. Anyway.
And be kind and rewind.
Yes, and rewind your tapes so that other people don't have to like put in the tape and it's not rewound yet, which is in a world now where you put your phone down watching live television and then go to a computer and turn it back on and it knows exactly where you were. That must be a weird feeling for people to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those things were incredibly, like I knew one person who had a VCR and they, to me, were wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got it, it was probably like seen by the other people in my town as like the most white trash thing in the world, that like our broke asses had a VCR. But they didn't know that my dad was planning on leaving us and he was trying to be nice. So anyway.
He had a plan.
Yeah,
he was a man with a plan.
Here's things. Maybe that'll make you feel better when I walk out. They didn't mean to bum us out. I'm not bummed out, but I'm 50, by the way. Actually, I'm 52. I just learned the other day. So don't worry, I'm okay. I'm just telling a story.
Okay.
All right, Melanie. So good. Omnipod 5 has been good for you.
We've had a really, really good experience. I miss the extended bolus.
Mm-hmm.
That was really hard for us because we used it at school to overcome recess immediately after lunch.
Sure.
We used it as tricks for, different things or whatever, which that I really miss. And then when we reset it this time, I was going to be so thoughtful about it and really pay attention and, make sure the settings were tuned in and blah, blah, blah. And I just copied over my settings from the other.
Mm-hmm.
And his insulin needs, like his basal rate, man, it has really gone up. So, reset, try number 2 with the Omnipod 5 it took us a while to get dialed in, but we're there now. Thank goodness. So I'm happy again.
Good for you. Congratulations. And the control thing, have you given some of it away, or are you, because you're going to an algorithm. You're basically saying, I'm going to let it do things. Like, is that fighting with that part of your nature?
No, because when it comes to that, okay, like I have no problem giving over to somebody or something that I think is better at it than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it was designed to do that. So I'm trusting, like, please do this. This is sometimes incredibly hard. I don't want to do this. I want you to do it if you can do it better. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, good for you. That's, a big leap. It's not an easy thing for people to do. So it's very cool that you're able to do it. No other autoimmune stuff's popped up since then?
No.
Good.
Of course, I have a fear. I think about it a lot now, especially at first. That was a little scary. But I've gotten past it. We did order is it the TrialNet?
Mm-hmm.
And, I wanted my son to do it, and my older son. And we thought about it for a while. He was terrified. He didn't want to just do the finger prick was something. And finally he broke down and just told me, like, if it's coming, I don't think I want to know. And I just decided to respect that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it's, the right thing to do, right? You gotta, old enough. He's 15, right?
Well, yeah, he was probably like 13 at the time, but he's one of those wise old souls that he finally realized. Either he really felt that way, or he realized that if he said that, I wouldn't make him prick his finger. I'm not sure, but either way, we haven't done it.
That's more possible, perhaps. He's just
maybe. He's pretty smart.
I could trick this lady out of poking my finger. Maybe I could do that. Yeah. That'd be great if you're giving him all this, like, old soul, like,
credit.
Credit.
Creds.
He's just like, he's like, no, I just don't want to do that.
He's like, no, I'm just manipulative.
All right. Do you think you'll move to Dexcom G7 when it's available to work with Omnipod 5?
I suppose. I'm hearing mixed reviews, but to be honest, I say that, but I haven't heard that much, like, a lot about it yet, because I guess I'm kind of focused on our tools,
what
right?
Doing,
I guess
sure.
What I'm really anxious about is the being able for him to only carry one device, just his phone, which, who knows when that'll come. I thought I heard it was at the FDA now. Or something.
Melanie, I don't know anything. So, because I don't know. Well, I don't work there, obviously, but I feel like Omnipod's close to iOS for Omnipod 5. That's the vibe I'm getting, is that there's things that happen in the background at all these companies. Like the day you get something's not the day they figure it out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's a lead up to it, and you can kind of see when they're doing things. I'm like, these are the things you do before this happens. That's the way to, I've been around it long enough now that I know if, as an example, Dexcom's like, hey, we'd like to come on and talk about the G7. I'm like, oh, okay. It's a year and a half away.
Here it comes.
Yeah. Like they want to start this conversation now. And then like you can see how they plan things out. And so
yeah, I definitely remember your first podcast about it. I got super excited about it. And I believe that was before the Omnipod 5, right? And so I'm excited for the idea of it, but now I'm locked into Omnipod 5, right? So until that happens.
I think all of it, like iPhone control for Omnipod 5, Dexcom 7 with Omnipod 5. I think you and I are talking now in July of 2023. So this is my guess, but I think this happens before the end of the calendar year. Like, that's my guess. Now we'll find out when I put this out if I was really wrong or not. But and it's based on nothing someone said to me. It's just like I'm watching them do what they're doing, and I'm like, it seems like it's about 6 months away. That's how it feels to me. So we'll see. Yeah. If everything goes right,
that's great.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it shouldn't. It shouldn't be that much trouble, right?
Well, and here's the thing: he is a person who is not a fan of the spy belt. He wears it sometimes. He plays flag football. He'll wear it during that. Obviously, he doesn't. He swims a lot. He doesn't have to carry it then. But when he's at school, he just wants to put it in his pocket. So here he is. The kids today don't even know what a button or a zipper is. I feel like, at least mine. Anyway, everything's athletic, pants and stuff. So here he is walking around with, saggy pockets with, all these devices. So it'd just be nice if he only had to carry the phone,
You mean that 4 times a day when I'm wearing like sweatpants and I go, where are my headphones at? And then I go back to the last place I was seated and they're like sitting behind the chair or in the crevice. And I'm like, oh, nothing stays in my pants. Like that idea? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like that.
I know what you're saying. All right. Melanie, is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you wanted to? Anything I missed?
I don't think so.
I did it. You did it.
We did it.
We did it. That's what I should have said. I do really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this with me. And it's a great conversation. So I can't thank you
cool
enough.
Talking to you. This is surreal. What a treat today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, Melanie, tell people about that for a minute. Why is it you're so excited to talk to me?
Because you taught me everything I ever needed to know about diabetes that they didn't teach me in the hospital.
I see. You owe me. Is that what you're saying?
A little. Yeah, maybe.
But so Arden says to me the other day, she goes, if mom dies, and I'm like, where's this going? I'm like,
okay, I'm listening.
She goes, you're going to have no trouble meeting a lady. And I was like, yeah, you don't think so? And she started telling me about like who she thinks I'll end up with and all this. It was a very weird conversation. She's like, I see.
Was your wife sitting there?
No, she wasn't with us. But don't worry, we told her about it when we got home. And so and she's telling me the kind of person. She's like, I think you're gonna end up with this kind of person, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, and if that doesn't work out, you are such a catch for some lady whose kid has diabetes or a woman with type 1.
Seriously. Nailed it. Yep.
She's like, you're not gonna have any trouble hooking a type 1 lady, that's for sure. So then, we're laughing because it's silly. And then we go home to try to imagine that Arden and I have like the same exact personality for the most part. Okay. And Kelly and Cole sort of share a similar personality. And like our shenanigans are not like, they're not Kelly's and Cole's shenanigans. So Cole's gone. He's off working. He's near you actually. But we come home to share this with Kelly. I'm like, hey, Kel, Arden's decided what kind of lady I'm going to be with if, you should die. And Kelly looks up, like she's working. She looks up like, what the hell is happening? And then we start joking back and forth. And she's like, what's wrong with you guys? And and she says things like, it's so much worse when you're together.
Right. It just compounds. Yeah.
Because everything I'm thinking, Arden's thinking.
And you're just bouncing off of each other, I'm sure.
It's got to be absolutely horrible to be involved in if you're not her or I. So Anyway.
And that is kind of a twisted, that's a little bit crazy, that conversation.
We're like setting each other up for jokes that Kelly doesn't see coming, but we don't even have to look at each other. Like I say something, I know what she's going to say next. Like, we can kind of, it's like talking, it's like me being here with a copy of myself. So
I love it.
Yeah. Kelly's like, by the time it's over, she's exhausted by us. And she's like, I'm going to go back to work now.
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm glad to know what kind of woman you'll marry if I die. I'm like,
Right. Good. I was worried about that.
yeah,
Now I could check that off the list.
yeah, exactly. And we're laughing and she's not amused. Like, just so that I'm being clear with everybody. Like, she's not.
I mean, no, this is awkward. Yeah. One of those really strange conversations.
Not awkward
Oh, well.
to Arden and I. So anyway,
Okay.
hold on 1 second for me. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. drinkag1.com/juicebox. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.